As we begin to design a new way of being, we have to lay down the very thing that we used our whole life to get what we want for something greater to take over. Now we're talking about genius. Now we're talking about innovation. Now, once the idea comes, the next step is that you have to take action. Now, it means that you have to be willing to step into the unknown. It means that you have to step outside the familiar self. When we begin to get creative, something unusual happens. We stop living by those survival emotions. Those survival emotions alter our perception and cause us to look at the future through the lens of the past. So there's this kind of model that says, here's the old self, and here's the new self. And there's a gap between the two. And when we no longer think, act, and feel in the same way, all of a sudden we start to feel uncomfortable. We start to feel unfamiliar. It starts to become unknown to us. And most people, the moment they step outside of the old self, because they're no longer making the same choice, they don't feel like themselves any longer. So the first thing they do is they make the same choices that produce the same behaviors, that create the same experiences, that produce the same emotions, and they say, this feels comfortable. Well, it feels familiar. The person, the maverick, who's willing to step out into the unknown, that unknown is the perfect place to create from. Because only in the unknown can you create something new. And if you and I can become comfortable in that unknown place, then the best way to predict the future is to create it. Teach your body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. Yeah. Now why? Well, the stronger the emotion you feel from the future you're creating, the more you're going to pay attention to the pictures in your mind. Yeah. And you're going to begin to remember your future. And biologically, it's the same as remembering your past. Yeah. So then you have to stay in the feeling of that future in order for you to be aligned to that destiny. When people start crossing the river of change from the old self to the new self, because they're no longer thinking, acting, and feeling in the same way, there is literally a biological, a neurological, a genetic, a chemical death of the old self. And this dark night of the soul, this unfamiliar place, is the true value, the true step towards developing a new self. And then if you can teach your body emotionally what the future will feel like, that means then you're not going to wait for your wealth to feel abundant, or your success to feel empowered, or your new relationship to feel love. In fact, the moment you start feeling abundant, you're generating wealth. The moment you start embracing empowerment, you're stepping towards your success. If you get up from a creative process and you feel grateful, you feel a love for life, you feel a joy for existence, you feel a passion for the moment, you will not be looking for your future, because you'll feel like it's already happened. When you get to that moment where you have that feeling, that's your compass, because that feeling is going to drive your behaviors. It's going to drive more of those thoughts. And when you feel that feeling and it's visceral, no person, no thing, no experience will stand in the way between you and that vision. And you will be initiated by the universe into wealth. Thoughts are the electrical charge in the quantum field, and feelings produce a magnetic charge in the quantum field. Yeah. And how you think and how you feel broadcasts electromagnetic energy that influences every single atom in your life. The thought sends the signal out, and the feeling draws the experience back to you. So then, if we're leaving the old and we are creating the new, then the next most important question is, well, if I'm going to create a new self, what thoughts do I want to think? What behaviors can I plan? And as you begin to image and rehearse a new way of being, you're changing your brain and body neurologically and biologically. That's the neuroscientific model of mental rehearsal. And as we begin to remind ourselves who we no longer want to be, and we remind ourselves every day of who we do want to be, there'll come a moment where we begin to silence the circuits in our brain that are connected to the old self and inhibit the chemicals that reaffirm the same identity, and then begin to fire and wire new circuits in our brain that begins to install the neurological hardware that begins to create a level of inspiration where we start seeing new possibilities. We see a new landscape, we see a new horizon. And that person who crosses the river of change then, all of a sudden has new opportunities in their life.
Whatever it takes for you to move into a state of being. And what is a state of being? Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain. Feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and how you feel creates your state of being. When you sit down and you become conscious of your unconscious thoughts, when you're in the program, you're unconscious, right? So the moment you become conscious of that thought, you're no longer the thought. You're observing the thought, and you begin to objectify your subjective self. You start pulling out of the unconscious program, and consciousness, awareness is the first step to do that. And so many people don't want to light a match in a dark place, because all of a sudden, when they decide to be defined by a vision of the future, they're stepping out of the known. You're going to hear, I can't, it's too hard, it's not going to work, what about this? And those are the thoughts that are standing in the way between that person and that vision. So what most people do is they say, I want the new house, the new car, the new relationship, I want a big bank account, I want my private jet, you know, they do all that stuff. And then they visualize that, but when they visualize it, they never get in touch with how it would feel if it happened. You have to go through the process of unlearning before you relearn. And that 95% of who we are, that is what's stopping us from stepping into a new future.
We have to leave our present understanding of reality, learn new information, begin to contemplate that information, and begin to take steps towards our destiny. The hardest part of all of this is making the time to learn, making the time to prepare ourselves, making the time to design a new future, and then having the willingness to step into it and say, I trust in the unknown instead of being afraid of the unknown.